Well, it is an endless conversation, but let's take it one notch further today with Evie Richards, who is Executive Director, Corruption Observatory. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. I am.
On the one hand, is this assessment of the anti-corruption drive, which of course you just heard the EFCC chairman talk about, and that's an issue on its own. Another one on its own, which is supposed to energize the anti-corruption drive, is the whistleblower policy, which the Minister of Finance says has failed or lost steam. I don't even know which of the words he used. Which one would you go for? So what's your take, first of all, on our fight against corruption so far?
Ayo, is painful. It's painful, very painful. The first question you should ask is, what kind of system should permit this type of enormous leakage? Listening to the chairman of the EFCC talking about trillions, billions, and all of that. I also listened to the Minister of Finance when she lamented concerning the failure of the whistleblower system. It shows that the national integrity system is below the optimum level, and a lot has to be done on this. Mr. Bauer may think that he is shoring up the performance of this administration, but he had just, by the speech he made, indicted the anti-corruption campaign of this present administration. Because if the campaign...
Indicted?
Yes.
Not endorse or commend?
No, it's an indictment. The fact that corruption is endemic, that lots of recoveries are being made, lots of convictions are being made, shows that the system is extremely dirty. We're talking about anti-corruption, and I keep hammering on this, not pro-corruption. Listen, about 2 weeks ago, we were with the chairman of the EFCC, our committee on national mirror body that mirrors ISO programs. We presented to him 3 standards, I think: the standard of anti-bribery, the standard of compliance, and that of risk. There were 3 standards. When he took a look at them, he said that yes, that's the way to go. He also did mention that he will make efforts to meet with the DG of the Standard Organization of Nigeria. And that brings me to this point of the lack of agency synergy in the country. We have almost everything. It's just that we do not do the right. See, the entire structure is working on its head.
Now, there's something you said the other time, and I'd like you to expatiate it too, so that people will understand. You talked about the national integrity system.
Yeah.
That sounds like you're talking about the instruments of government for fighting corruption. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and you see,
if you can just delineate those instruments, they explain to Nigerians what you mean by the integrity system and how it has become faulty over the years, such that these issues that are being raised, as
every public sector agency has 3 major deliverables. One is the rule of law, good quality of life, and the third one now that I don't have it offhand. Now, and you know that is supported by structures like the legislature, structures like the executive, the judiciary. Each time one of these structures becomes weak, you find out that you'll be having less and less rule of law, and quality of life begin to nosedive. That's the measure of the integrity system of any country. But there are sub-levels. We're talking about an accountant general of the country filtering away sums up to 30 billion naira. The first question you ask is, through what this system What system is permitting that kind of... It shows that the system is extremely weak. Now, what is being done all over the world is to ensure that lesser and lesser cases like this fall on the lap of the anti-graft agencies. So now you have several levels of checks and balances that are proactive. Now,
my apologies, sir. I'm a little bit lost. And it's not lost because, just as you said, we have almost everything that we need. One of those instruments that a good number of people assume that, look, it should be a no-brainer, is the Auditor General's report. Every year we receive that report. An analysis by Serap recently of the 2017 Auditor General's report talks about something in the region of 2.7 or so trillion naira unaccounted for in 1 year. And one is wondering, if the Auditor General, and most of the time what we have seen from what reports made available is that there isn't so much action on this Auditor General's report in particular for about a year or two. And of course, before even all of that litigation or conversation or whatever would happen, a year or 2 years have passed. So one wonders, if we have everything and they are functional, because the Auditor General's office is obviously working to release that report, what then is the problem?
That's exactly what I'm laboring to explain. The Auditor General's office is a reactive institution. It gives you report of damages already done. We're talking about standards, international standards that strengthen systems and makes it very impossible for corruption to occur. For instance, even a management system like the quality management system, okay, everything you do will be through process, and you are thinking based on the risk that you will meet, such that nothing takes you by accident. All right, and the system becomes so strong that for you to steal 1 million naira, the system will throw it up. People would know. There is this one called the anti-bribery management system standard that is already with the EFCC. You know, we're giving a copy to the EFCC. The problem is the language from the top, the tone from the top. The president, I'm sorry, with all due respect, I do not think he's really serious about fighting corruption. Why am I saying this? And they say he's a champion of, African champion of anti. I don't know what measures, any considered or not, was used to, make that appointment or an award or something. Look at your country, Ayo. There is no whistleblower protection law. The first thing you do if you want to fight corruption is to protect those who want to speak out, talk, let us know what's going on, not based on what has happened, based on suspicion alone.
So you think that's why the policy failed the perks or the
I listened carefully to the finance minister when she said that people are afraid. See, let me tell you.
And that's where I'm interested, Mr. Richard. If the Minister of Finance, government is coming out to say that the whistleblower protection failed, but isn't the government belly aching? Because if we went by the account of those who had come out in the past, to blow a whistle on stash of funds in a location, a lot of them were not compensated in the past. A lot of them, went undercover due to threats. So doesn't this speak to the failure of government to implement the policy to the letter?
It's not about implement. The policy itself was not right. See, the world best practice, and I was one of the few Africans who sat on the ISO committee that developed this Whistleblower Protection Act, already resident in Nigeria with the SOM. Okay. Now, it's based on 3 principles. The first of it is protection. The other one is confidentiality, and then trust. The issue of incentivizing whistleblowing is optional. So why should the giant of Africa promulgate a policy based on incentives The real thing is not being done. And now...
Are you saying it shouldn't have been incentivized?
That is optional, very optional. What the average whistleblower wants is to be protected, is to trust the institution he's blowing the whistle to, and to ensure that there are no reprimands, there are no witch hunts, and all of that. And
that's exactly the point. The whistleblower goes against strong politicians, so definitely they'll be witch hunted, and they will require some form of reward, for the huge opposition that they're coming up against.
Reward is not reward. In a proper setting, if you blew the whistle in China's organization right now, the management will be so careful as to what would do with you after you blew the whistle. Because the onus of, how do you put that in law now, that whatever comes back to you is not as a result of the whistle that you blew. The protection is not just only around you, on you, but around everyone that is around you.
So essentially you're saying that the policy was faulty ab initio.
It wasn't. It was a laughable policy.
Okay, so what should have happened and what should happen now around that particular policy?
You see, since the days of President Obasanjo, and I'm really, let me even give credit to the executive this time, and a show of shame to the legislature. They exist to make laws for good governance, all right, for the people. The legislature in the days of Obasanjo, this particular bill went up onto second reading. It went under the carpet. Goodluck Jonathan's time was the same thing. As we speak...
That you're talking about the whistleblower law?
Yes. We don't have one. They don't have the... Maybe they are scared that they will be the first culprits if it so happens. Because that's the first thing that they ought to do. And they are not doing it. It's not in the place of the executive to begin to talk about protecting whistleblowers. Because the first primary act of the legislature is to hold the executive to account.
So when you talk about protection for whistleblowers, I want you to break it down now. What are you recommending, should in case this policy will be reconsidered in the future, for expansion, for it to be more comprehensive?
First and foremost, let me just say that there's no point reinventing the wheel. The policy is with us. The world best practice is resident at the SON. They can just pick a copy there, change some things and make it our own law here in Nigeria, domesticate it. Okay. Now,
is this something with the legislature already?
This is the issue with, is it interagency rivalry or lack of synergy or whatever you want to call it? Everything we have in this country, but nothing is being done the way it should be done. Okay, so the oversight, whatever that is in the legislature, can easily go to the SON. SON should even reach out, like Mr. Bauer promised to reach out to the DG of the SON. We have one president, we have one country, we have one system. So why do we...
Now that you mentioned Mr. Bauer, he's high on the achievements of the EFCC as far as recovery of assets is concerned, and that's which he mentioned specifically about the former Accountant General of the Federation. Do you think that that has been done in a hurry, considering the fact that the case is still on trial, and isn't this tantamount to some form of media trial?
Well, there's no harm in Mr. Bauer reeling out to us the good work that he has done, the performance, the achievements within the period of time, all of that. But what I find curious there is the fact that he has failed to recognize that he was indicting the anti-corruption campaign of this administration. He was merely saying the work that we're doing, the more we do it, the more corruption thrives. That was what he was saying. And I can really challenge you. If you like, go across the country, build prison yards all over. It doesn't sort out. So reactive institutions, yes, we need them in the polity. But what we need most are proactive institutions.
Such as?
The SON, for instance, okay? The BPP, for instance, Bureau of Public Procurement, the PCC, Public Complaints Commission, NAITI, CCPC. These are the agencies that should be strengthened, seriously strengthened, properly funded. Once you do this, Mr. Bauer, we have less work to do.
These are the structures that you refer to as the integrity system of the...
All those are subsets of the integrity system. So some are resident, like the PCC is resident in the legislature, where everybody can go. Is called the Public Complaints Commission. Whatever happens, you can go there and speak. It's an agency of the legislature. The CCPC is an agency of the executive. But in the wisdom of governance, good governance, those subsets are there to put in place multiple levels of checks and balances, so that very few cases now fall to the reactive agencies for them to handle. As it were today, the ICPC, the EFCC, they are overwhelmed.
Now, you talked about how good the function of proactive and reactive, institutions. You said that the Auditor General's office is a reactive institution.
It is.
But if even in its reaction or reactionary activities, would you say it has been strong enough? There are those who are pointing to the absence of the audit law, of an audit law, an audit commission, to be able to, for the office of the Auditor General to function with more teeth.
Well, you know the kind of country that I really don't want to go to that side of the conversation, but if we have ideal Nigerians, people with the love of country at heart, these things would work.
Okay.
I'm curious also about whether the FCC should go after the proactive institutions as well, because that's where the corruption is perpetrated, or seemingly perpetrated.
No,
that's where the discoveries are done.
To be schooled. All of them need to be schooled first and foremost, because imagine the EFCC right now cannot be said to be void of corruption.
The EFCC itself.
Yes, and so is the ICPC. All right, so first and foremost, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands.
This conversation is definitely endless, because there is financial crime on one hand, and then there is corruption. And corruption is not only financial.
No.
It's a conversation that will not end, because it is something that we're always dealing with. But now we have to thank you very much for being here this morning, making the sacrifice to come to the studio. EVA Richard is Executive Director, Corruption Observatory. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.